Hello everyone, and welcome to the fifth in the series of ongoing Hyperion Gunblade construction demonstration videos. In this video, we're going to be assembling the Gunblade handle using wood glue, wood putty, and you'll want a number of clamps, small ones like these, in order to hold everything together. Now, one of the first pieces we're going to glue to our main Gunblade is this first layer of the handle detail. You don't need a lot of glue, but you want just enough to cover the entire surface. And then you'll want to press it gently into place. You can use this top edge here, the bottom edge here, the top here, and the side here to really get it in position. But once we've got that in position, we're going to want to clamp it there. And one of the things about gluing is you really can't rush. You can't rush any of these steps. Once we've got the clamps here, we're going to let this dry. And now we're ready to remove the clamps. And you can see this is securely in place, lined very well. We're going to turn this over and glue on the piece that mirrors on the other side. Once again, we'll use clamps to hold the pieces in place. We have removed the clamps, and now both of the first pieces of the Gunblade handle have been glued in place. In this next step, we're going to be gluing the trigger into this hole here. I'll be doing that by putting a generous amount of wood glue in the hole that's created here. And then simply sliding the end, putting a little bit of glue on the end of the trigger here as well, just to make sure we have everything coated. And then we're going to just slide it into the hole. The trigger is going to dry right as it is. We're going to take this opportunity to use some wood putty to fill in the small gaps here and here. And the reason we do that now is because when we place the trigger guard in, it'll make this area more difficult to reach. So we putty this first, and that gives us a chance to sand this without running into anything. We've put a generous amount of wood putty around the trigger. The putty has had plenty of time to dry, so now we'll be using some fine-grained sandpaper to sand down the putty before we move on to the next step of gluing in the trigger guard. We have finished sanding the putty, and it's now smooth. And now we will glue the trigger guard in place. Since it's hard sometimes to judge how well this piece is going to sit in here, you want to have a generous amount of glue to work with. And for this, I'm going to kind of roll it into position because this is kind of a tight fit. And I don't want to bend this so much that it breaks. There's nothing really holding this in place. So I'm going to get some tape and some wax paper and secure this just so it stays in position. And I'm going to clean the rest of this excess glue up. Wax paper is the part that will get the glue on it, and it usually comes right off, and even if it does get stuck, I can easily sand the wax paper away. Tighten this clamp on the front part, which will help to make sure that the trigger guard stays in position. The glue has had a chance to dry, so we are going to remove the clamps and apply some wood putty to the various seams, and then let that dry. The seams where the trigger guard is fitted to the blade has some gaps. So I'm going to sand it to get rid of some of this excess glue and then cover this area here with wood putty. I have the putty filled in all the gaps around the trigger guard and the blade. And since it's going to be drying here for several hours, I'm going to take advantage of this to glue the underblade detail piece in the position here. So we'll apply a generous amount of glue along here. The underblade detail piece held in position by these two clamps, and then we'll let that dry while we let the putty dry. The glue and putty have finished drying, so we're going to remove the clamps and begin sanding the putty. And we've sanded the excess putty away, and we've got a pretty good surface here. So the next step, we're going to begin gluing the final handle pieces on. This is the first one, and we're going to glue it right on top here. So now we've got them pretty well lined up. I'm going to put the clamps in place. We'll just let it dry. This detail piece is attached. We're going to now attach the other one on the other side to mirror it. We'll let this dry. And you can see the finished product of at least the assembly process is done. We want to turn this into what looks like one solid piece arcing over, and I've discussed that several times. So we're going to put wood putty in this gap here and then begin sanding all across here. We have generously spread putty all along the different seams. Any of the places where you can see the two layers of met, you want to put some in. You can see I put a little bit along the curve of this piece, a little bit on some of the flawed areas in the previous putty jobs that I've done. And now we're going to sand it all smooth. The steps here, repeated sanding and puttying until everything looks as nice as you'd like it. The goal here is to make this all look like a finished product. Like it's not a collection of glued together pieces of wood, but instead is one solid object. Now we'll just continue sanding. The sanding and use of wood putty is complete. We've shaped this curve from the layers of wood and filled in all the little imperfections. In the next episode, we're going to begin painting. So please tune in then.